Mikkel asked me to talk a little bit today about beef cattle marketing considerations. And this is always one of the hardest topics because it's one of the biggest factors that drive profitability of any really livestock enterprise is basically the price you receive. And unfortunately, it's one of the things that you really can't control, right? The price received is set by the markets. You don't really have a lot of control over that. And so as I approach this topic, I try to look at it from a perspective of you know, what are the things that you can control to maybe maximize that market value? And that's what today's talk sort of centered on. To get started with that, I want everybody to make sure we're on the same page and to realize this is just a generic overview of what the cattle industry, the segments are from that. Most I would suspect are commercial cow calf producers, meaning you raise cows and then sell the calves. Most operations, I think, based on our recent survey, is about 85% or maybe 90 even were spring-born calves and sold calves in the fall. Then there's the next stage after they leave the ranch and the cow calf operation side, they go to the yearling stocker operators. And then ultimately to the feedlots, packers, and then out to the restaurants and retail chains and eventually end up on a plate. The reason I bring this up is because it's important to understand this and when you're marketing, each one of these segments sort of has a niche weight and a niche characteristic that they're looking for. And if you fall outside of that, that's when you start to receive discounts for your animals. So, for instance, when certain cows or calves, excuse me, if we're talking about a yearling stocker operator, if they're in say 500, 550 pound weight class, they make great candidates to go on to wheat pasture. Or you can choose, if you have the grass available to you, you can choose to keep keep the calves after weaning, and then you keep them till about 800 or 900 pounds before they go into the feedlot for the finishing phase. And and then from there, they're fed out and then sold to the packers. This is a delicate balance, this section right here for our region, because we can't get our cattle too big. Obviously, we don't have the forage base to support big cattle. But at the same time, we still have to fit the boxes at the packer level. And what I mean by that, we have to have certain size ribeye areas, certain size of roasts and that kind of thing. So basically they have a weight and size range that they like on the live animal. And if it's outside of that range, then that's when discounts occur. Okay. So not to belabor that too much, and let's see, my computer sort of froze up on me. There we go. Hold on. Let's see if we can. There we go. So when we talk about these value-added programs, I think, and I'm going to approach this from the cow-calf side to get started. It's important that you understand your value added to what. So you need to establish this as a baseline of where your operation is at, and then from there you can start adding some of these what we would consider traditional value added programs, maybe an organic or a grass fed or whatever that might be. But before you do add some of those certification programs, a lot of your efforts might be better spent with what I'd call just traditional management scenarios that do add value to the herd. Okay, and I'll explain these here in a second. So the first question is that you should ask yourself if you're thinking about marketing is, how do you market your calves? And we're starting at the cow calf side. And how much time do you put into marketing? So for instance, we have a lot of people that we work with who have become interested in raising calves, feeding the calves, and selling meat to customers locally. you have to realize that this sort of marketing takes a lot of time. There's a lot of time spent farmers markets, advertising, that kind of thing. It's a commitment, especially when you get started. So if you don't have that time, you can't create that time from nothing. So you have to keep that in mind. How much time do you have to put into these things? And do your homework. One of the most recent examples that I worked with, they fed the animal quite a bit, and basically the fat cattle price for her break-even price was nearly $7,000 for one animal. So obviously we've had to restructure that a little bit. So let's start with some of the common management value added, and that's what I call it. This is sort of a made up term, but what I mean by that is here's where discounts happen. So let's say if you're taking a group of calves in for sale, you're going to receive discount by mixed undesirable breeds. There's some of these they just don't like, and it's not that they have a prejudice, if you will, against the breed. It's just in their experience, certain things didn't work for converting the feed that they put into them once they buy them to converting that to meat. So therefore, they tend to avoid some of those. Horned cattle typically get a little bit of a discount. Bulls, that is definitely one. If you're able to sell steers rather than bulls, that makes up quite a bit of a discount. And the other ones we're going to talk about are fresh weaned or high stress calves. And then at the very end, we'll talk about that again. So I'm going to put an asterisk, if you will, next to those. So if you have this situation, I would probably encourage you at this point, clean these up first. Okay. This is the very first thing you need to do when you think about marketing, is get these types of deals cleaned up first, and then you can transition into some other things. One of the things is a uniform program. Now, the hard part about marketing is we have in New Mexico, we have a really wide range of beef production operation types. So if you're selling 1, 2, 5, maybe even 10 calves, that type of thing, then that's sort of different than if you can fill a pot with, say, 80 calves. But let's say if you look at this uniform program, if you're going through the sale barn, then you have commissions and fees, and it's somewhere around 3% plus some fees. It's if you have a large enough operation that you can fill a semi truck, that's usually kind of the cutoff for these country buyers, is they want to come in and buy at least a pot load. Then it's technically a discount, okay? Because you can sell without that commission and fees. So let's say if you're selling 80 steers, and that means you need to run about 200 cows and to sell on the ranch, and they may take a mix that could be a little less because they could take a mix of steers and heifers, but that's just in general. Okay. So the thing that I have about yearly equals sale barn is that if you have a year-round calving situation, then you don't have a uniform calf crop, and you can never at any point within a year fill a pot load. So therefore, that discount would apply to you because you could avoid that by simply having a defined calving season and marketing all your calves at once. Okay. This was a study, it's been out now a couple of years, several years now, that looked at a lot of factors that had been that affected, I guess you will, the price of calves received. And the highly variable lots in that study were basically about $1.50 a hundredweight discount. The small lots were about $1.30. So it means you lose, if you really kind of distill this down, that if you have the opportunity to sell off of the ranch, but you're selling through the sale barn, you lose ballpark of $40 per head on commission, fees, and discounts for variability associated with, say, year-round calving if you're doing that. Okay, so that's really a $40 discount per head in those scenarios due to those different factors. The other one, and we hear this quite a bit, that somebody will say, my neighbor, I sold my calves, they weighed the same as my neighbors, and he got 20 cents more per pound than I did, or $20 more a hundredweight. But the reason is, it isn't that the cattle buyer didn't like them, at least not usually. It really stems from, they look at these frame sizes, which are shown on the left, that classify them basically as small, medium, or larges. And then as you look to the right, these are the muscle scores they give. All right. So you can have a medium number one or a medium number two, and you can look at how that muscle definition is different. And so if you have some large ones or large twos, they obviously are going to sell a little bit better. Medium one and twos usually don't sell too poorly. It's when you get into the small frame, and especially this number three, where they're sort of cowhocked, they're really narrow at the back end. This is where a pretty significant discount comes in on these small number threes. So the reason, let me show you this really quick. So assume you're selling 550-pound steers, okay? And this price break, and right now it's probably a little less than that, honestly. I'd have to go look at that. But again, it's been so variable, but it varies based on market conditions. But just say a price break between a large number one that I just showed you, so a large number one and a medium number two, if you assume that price break is about $18, that difference is almost $100 a calf for the same weight. Okay, you're just getting discounted. You're going to receive that much less per pound on those calves just by the different frame and muscle classification. So I think about this, that if a bull can breed 25 cows in a year, well, that a bull that will give you more of the higher desirable calves, or more desirable calves, excuse me, that can yield, $2,500 premium in a single year in some cases. This is really, really variable. So I wouldn't hang my hat on any given number. Sometimes it can be more, and sometimes it can be a lot less. But the thing is, sometimes skimping on a bull isn't always the best thing, especially if you think you keep that bull 3 or 4 years. You can pay for a pretty good bull just in your calf value. Okay. The other one, we get a lot of discounts. Now, I'm going to asterisk this, and we're going to talk about it at the end, because there's some things in our region that is a little different than other places. So we will talk about that later. But bovine respiratory disease is the largest challenge facing the beef industry. I've seen costs up, estimates up now towards $1 billion annually. And so those fresh weaned and naive, what I mean by naive, they've never seen a vaccine needle in their life, are the most susceptible to respiratory disease. What that disease does, if you look at this, it doesn't just make them sick in terms of fevers and that type of thing, but it actually causes lung tissue degradation. And this is what it shows like. I've seen cases where it's a lot worse than this. And obviously, once you get to this stage of lung damage, then the animal dies right away. These rates of this, it's interesting. We've had better vaccines. We've had more people use vaccines, but the rates of respiratory disease have not decreased and have actually increased a little bit. So it's a battle we're not winning. But they really but the buyers know this. And so if they have to doctor these calves, or they think they're going to have to doctor these calves, that's why they discount what they call balling calves. When those calves are balling coming through the ring, those guys pick it up. So when you pull them right off of the cow and you run them through the ring, you're taking a discount. Sort of why your buyer cares also. If you look at this, a lot of this, there's for animal tracking, there's various things in different export markets. We sell, and I should update this, this is only through 2016, but our exports add almost 260, and that's probably closer to $300 per head for each slaughter animal that we produce. And And everybody gets hung up on we shouldn't be importing meat or these various things. That's a really complex question. So let's say if we import 100 pounds of hamburger on a trade exchange, but we export 200 pounds of livers that we're not able to sell in the United States, that's a good trade-off. Okay, so it's not just a pounds of beef scenario. We export a lot of cuts that we wouldn't be able to otherwise market here. Okay, and that adds a lot of value to it. But and why that matters, you have to keep that in mind for some of these traceability programs and those types of things that are available. Okay, this was an interesting. This has been several years ago, but I found this in that they were discussing feeders perspective on profitability. And if you look at this, the top 10% of the calves, so the 10% of the calves were worth on average $500 more per head to the feedlot when they fed them out. Okay. The top 10%'s value is $2.40 more per day than the bottom 10%. So that's a really big difference. And what that means is just the top 10% performing animals versus the bottom 10% in terms of performance. So, but this is the big thing, that if you're marketing calves to your buyers, says we know where the cattle are coming from and we know how much we can pay for these calves. And a good example of this, I actually had a cattle buyer call me this, it's been 3 months ago, I think. And he said he bought loads of calves out of New Mexico, and he's done it all the time. But for whatever reason, the ones he bought last year really broke. When they hit the feed yard, and I mean broke in terms of respiratory disease outbreak. He said now he has, I can't remember, 10 pot loads of calves sitting in a yard, and those same buyers won't take calves from him because they came from New Mexico. So that word does get out. And even though he was doing some country buying around at little small ranches, word got out, and now he's having a difficult time selling his calves to the feeders. So therefore, he's going to have a difficult time buying calves again in this region. So age matters, health matters. Age and source to an extent matters, and it depends on the program. We'll talk about that. But quality always matters, okay? And you will hear an underlying argument at times that they only pay me for the pounds, and that's all. And that's, in some cases, I guess that's true, but from a meat quality perspective, it still matters, because at the end of the day, that's what drives demand for the consumers. So we should all in the beef industry be interested in the meat quality, but the calf quality also matters and can make a big difference in the underlying level of profitability. I won't belabor this too much. We'll talk a little bit about this documentation, and then I'm going to outline some vaccine programs. These are some different weight classes, and this is from the ACES High sale. I'll describe that in a minute. And this is basically, if I'd like you to pay attention to this column, these are the premiums received in that sale on a per hundredweight basis of basically documenting your health program versus not. And you can see that there's a pretty substantial difference in these, and in some cases up to $25 a hundredweight difference. Okay. So you think that on a 5-weight calf, that's $100, which buys a lot of vaccine per calf. Okay. Age and source verification. What this means is it links an animal to a premise ID. Okay. And so the premise ID is issued through the USDA. And then these 840 tags is what they're called. These 840 EID tags are sold to that premise. So they are tied to that premise. If you want to do some age and source verification, there are some documentations that you'll have to do, and you will have to put the 840 EID tags in those calves. So that will say if they're age verified, and they're also source verified, if you will. This is getting to be a pretty big hot topic. I'm sure you guys have been following this in a lot of the news press. There's a lot of push for this 840 tag, basically replacing I guess it would be replacing the old vet. If you remember those silver vet tags that went in. I have not, I don't know that I have a clear understanding if they're proposing to mandate this for each calf before it leaves the ranch, or if they're going to bottleneck it at the feedlot. So it's something to keep in mind, because they are starting to push for different requirements for these 840 EID tags. All right, shifting gears just a little bit. Is the concept of shrink. Okay. Now, if you're selling off of the ranch to a buyer, there's something that we call a pencil shrink. This is the shrink that's pre-agreed upon, and it's prior to sale and shipment of the cattle. So what that means is, we'll say we're going to buy 80 steers at 550 pounds, and we're going to shrink them 2% or something of that nature. So that means that they'll reduce the weigh-in by 2%. Now, if you're selling at the sale barn, the difference is the actual shrink is really experienced by the calves at the barn. What I mean from that is, from the time they leave your place to the time they are sold at the sale barn, they're weighed immediately before they enter that ring, and then that's the weight they're sold on. So all of that shrink is experienced by the seller. Okay. So let's say that we have 100 calves that average 550 pounds. Okay, so that's 55,000 pounds. And if we're selling those calves, if we do that on a 3% pencil shrink, that means we would dock 1,650 pounds off of them. Now, let's say if we throw them in a trailer, pull them right off of their moms, there should be a negative there. But if we pull them right off the cows and we throw them in the trailer and they shrink 9%, because we take them right to the sale barn, they sit overnight, they've never eaten out of a bunk, they've never drinking out of a tank, so they don't really know how to do those things. So they experience a 9% shrink. That means you lost 5,000 pounds almost. And in today's market, if you look at that loss would say at $2.80 a pound, it will cost you almost $14,000. Okay. Or almost $100 a difference in those calf prices. And so that's a big one to think about, because in managing the shrink, especially on sort of our more extensive operations where we're out in these rough pastures, we have limited crell space. A lot of times our only option is to gather these calves up and then take them directly to the sale barn. And if that's the case, you're definitely going to have or be on the upper end of this level of shrink, and it can cost a lot of money. Okay. All right, let's see. We do run a VAC verified program at NMSU. I'm just going to show you this and because I want to show you what some typical health programs look like, and this is really modeled off of several of the health programs around the United States. So if you're interested, you can talk to Mikkel and we can get it lined up. But there's a lot of drug companies, or even your veterinarian could also do this verification process for you. Basically, for our VAC verified program and a lot of things, this is just a really good vaccine program to follow anyway. Is if you can give them a modified live or a chemically altered, something like a Cattle Master, or maybe one of the intranasal vaccines, and then give them a 7, 8, or 9 way. And then this is the best time to brand, castrate, and dehorn. All right. So I know that where I came from before this was Oklahoma, and they had what we called an Oklahoma implant. So the idea is that you leave the testicles in place on the bull calves till fall, because you're going to get a little more growth. And to an extent that's true, but usually when you cut them in the fall, it's harder on them, so you're going to lose that much anyway. Okay, you're going to lose that increased gain will be gone when you cut them in the fall. Okay, because it is a lot harder on them at that point. This is also a great time to clean up any horns you might have. and of course get your branding done. And then for weaning, if for the VAC verified or some of these others, and it says prior to weaning, but I know sometimes that's not possible. We'd ask that you hit them. A good approach is hit them with the modified live, chemically altered, or again that intranasal. If they had the intranasal at branding, probably that modified live or chemically altered is a little better. And then of course hit them with the 7, 8, or 9 way. And this is also a good time to treat them for parasites, deworm them, if you will. Let's see. So basically for the ACES High certification, again, it's the same thing for the most part. We can work with IMI. It's a company called IMI Global, and they can do the agent source verification for you if you want. We can help you with that process, or just kick you over to them and they can do it. Theirs is usually about $250. It may have gone up slightly for the whole herd, but you do have to have a premise ID for that. And then again, at weaning time, you want to booster your modified live. You give them your 7 or 8. So very, very similar. If you're going to wean and keep your calves, another option is to give them this Mannheimia hemolytica vaccine at weaning. And Bovashield Gold has and there might be another in some of the other manufacturers. I'm not sure. I know the Bovashield has one that comes with Mannheimia, okay, with it. And then we ask to wean 45 days if you can, or wean 45 days at minimum. That's a typical VAC 45 program, okay? I'm going to skip the next one here in a second. Let's see. Okay. We're getting close to being done here, and I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions, but basically there's also these VAC 45 plus programs, and we call it ACES High Plus. Everything's the same. So you have your shots at branding, shots at weaning, but then they'll booster the shots again during that weaning process. All right. And there's now getting to be even a push for weaning these calves 60 days, 45 to 60 days now, 45 sort of the minimum. And the reason for all of this is because this all goes back to that bovine respiratory disease. So the idea is to reduce the susceptibility of these animals to respiratory disease, so that there aren't those losses either in gains or death, or the treatment cost associated with that. So I guess by the textbooks and everything that we tell you, or you're going to read in magazines, we're supposed to tell you to do this, wean your calves this long. And we have a reality here in New Mexico, and things are a little different because we're coming out of our monsoon about the time weaning occurs. And so that means our forage is going to start declining in quality. And I guess I was talking to Mikkel earlier. You guys up there are kind of like we are down here. We're awful dry right now, and grass is pretty short. So if you wean one calf for 45 days, that's approximately 3/4 of an animal unit monthly, or basically how much it would take to run a 1,000-pound cow. Okay, so these are some back of the napkin numbers, but so if you weaned 200 calves and you keep them 45 days on grass, okay, that's the same as feeding 150 cows for 1 month. All right, that'd be the same thing. So if your pasture's at $30 a month, and that's just, kind of spitballing it, that would be about a $4,500 value to you. All right, so that means your calf premium, just to cover that cost, would need to be over $22 per head. Now, when we see, and I didn't break all the studies out for here, so you kind of, some of this you can read as you read these, you'll probably be able to see that they'll tell you some of the biggest value in the 45 or 60 day weaning programs is the weight of the calf, the weight the calf gains. Okay, the weight the calf gains in that 45 days. But we have a lot of data that we've collected at Corona, and we've had a lot of data, well, not data, but a lot of stories from producers that have told us that when they pull the calves off of the cows and they keep them for 45 days, the weight is pretty close to the same as it was when they pulled them off the cow. So out here on our rangeland, we don't really get that bump. It doesn't seem like in a lot of years, we don't get that increase. And I'm sure that's operation dependent. So that's a generality. But if you're in that situation, you really have to evaluate, is it worth the premium to wean them 45 days, or am I better off just taking them in balling and taking the 10 or 15 or whatever hit that would be? And in some cases, I'll be honest, I know we're supposed to say wean the calves and do all this and get them set up for a health perspective, but in some cases, that first discount really is your best money. It just depends on your operation. Okay. All right. So I think, Mikkel, with that, I wanted to spend a little more time for this discussion on questions, because that's just such a big overview, and see if anybody had anything else that they'd like us to discuss more in depth. We can get into some of these certification programs, but I didn't know how many people were interested in that. So I thought I'd leave that for the question section.
Yeah, no problem. If you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. I see Jim, you're unmuted. Is there a question that, yep, okay. All right, so I see your hand raised, so you're unmuted, so feel free
Okay.
to ask.
I was looking for my. You see my picture?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. Oh, well, I don't know what's going on, but anyway, so I'm a rancher from eastern New Mexico, and despite my well-known name, I'm not Native American, but I have many friends in the ranching community that are, such as Marjorie, of course, and the Milford Dennerclaw and all of them. Visit with them a lot in the cattle growers, New Mexico cattle growers. I'm actually working with Craig. He's going to present at our December Cattlemen's College at the association meeting in Albuquerque. So this is a good dry run. I think Craig covered it very well. The question I'd want to ask, maybe Craig, you could discuss the beef quality assurance program and what role it has in helping meet all these requirements and practices that you're talking about. And I've seen on Facebook and otherwise that the BQA is having many training sessions up in the Navajo Nation and elsewhere in New Mexico. So I'll let you, and Mikela, you may have comments on this as well.
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, great question and great point. And yeah, it's probably one I should add to the slide deck. If you're not familiar, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, this started back in the 80s, basically, or at least activities in the 80s drove the formation of what we call the Beef Quality Assurance Program, or BQA. So every time you sell an animal, $1 is taken from, or is taken out of the sale of that animal. And in New Mexico, it's actually 2 now. And that goes to the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and they do it for promotional programs to help improve beef marketing and beef consumption to drive demand. Well, one of the big things, probably to me, the biggest feather in their cap, and that's just my opinion, has been the Beef Quality Assurance Program. If you haven't been through one of those trainings, we do have them up there all the time. They're a really great resource, and what it does is it walks you through the animal handling care. It walks you through proper vaccinations, protocols, and methods. It talks about ways to minimize bruising of carcasses, vaccine storage, medicine storage, how to build a relationship with your veterinarian in terms of what information you need to keep and provide. And the whole thing with this is if you remember back to that very first figure I showed of the overview of the beef cattle industry, virtually all, if they don't end up in a bear, cougar, or wolf's belly, are going to are going to be on somebody's plate somewhere in the world. And so the whole idea is to put forth the highest quality product we can. So the BQA certification, we require that for the ACES High program, but you can even tout that when you sell your calves that you are a BQA certified producer. And it, in some cases, will carry also a little bit of a premium. Just an anecdotal, I've had one rancher who told me, he's actually over from Jim's part of the world. I think for the first 3 years he was really critical. Well, I've been doing all of this and I never received a dime more or even a penny more. And he called me a year ago and he said, the first 3 years it didn't work that great for me. The next 5 has been fantastic. So he's really happy and he keeps his certification up. So yeah, I would, if you're not certified, let us know, and Mikkel, we can sure line something up there and make that happen. It's a really neat program. Consumers really like it, and they like that we do that within the beef industry because it's all voluntary to produce beef in the highest standard we can.
Yeah, no problem. Definitely something that we can look forward to in the next round of trying to get that showcased out here for ranchers. Appreciate it, Jim, for your question. Definitely plenty of things to share. If you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. While you guys are figuring that out, Craig, about that NMSU certification, is there like a designated area online where these guys can access what the program is about, or their enrollment? Like how do they get certified? Is there like a form, whatnot?
Gotcha. Yeah, no, good question. So we still run that. It's and basically we verify your vaccine practices. So really, if you're interested in this, and it'd probably be next year at this, unless you still have your receipts from branding. I like to work it through, so basically through Mikkel. You would go see Mikkel and tell her you're interested, and then we would talk about how we get the materials assembled. What you would need to show are vaccines from branding receipts for your vaccines at branding. And then you'll have to show, of course, that you've done that they're all castrated and dehorned. And then you'll have to show the vaccine receipts for your weaning period. And then we can either issue a VAC verified certificate at that point, or if you'd like to continue in the ACES High program, then you have to just wean them for 45 days. We used to require the age and source verification, but we have since not done that because we've had a lot of people that just had a lot of issues or troubles, not with IMI, they were fantastic, but just the process of that. Different premise ID situations and that type of thing. So we did drop that requirement. So I'd say get with your local extension, or you can email me directly and we can handle it that way. But you do need your receipts for the number of calves. It needs to show the doses for the number of calves that you vaccinated. For example, if you're enrolling 50 calves, you have to have receipts for at least 50 doses of each vaccine.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the chat have any questions? We'll take one more question. If there are none, then we'll go ahead and move on. Okay. All right. Well, if you guys have any questions about the certification, the New Mexico certification, Craig's information is all on here. So if you want to take a screenshot, feel free, and his email's on there, and so well as his phone number. But thank you again, Craig, for hopping on here. I really appreciate it. It's always a treat having you on here. We learn so much from you. But if you want, we'll go ahead and conclude this evening's presentation. And if Craig, you want to stick around, we're just going to be talking about our further upcoming events that we have under the NSA project.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to our presentation. I really appreciate you all being here this evening. I am trying to release a polls report, but Zoom has been updated, and unfortunately I cannot find the panel to where I can release the poll. So with that being said, I will just go ahead and email that out to you guys individually. So if I can get your feedback on how this presentations, these webinars that we share with you during the webinars, I should say, how this information you use it. So thank you all for joining us. Next week, we have a plant pollinators. This will be presented at Nanahaza Chapter House. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that area, but it is out in Kirtland, New Mexico. So this will be presented by Beverly Maxwell. She's the Dene College Extension agent. And we also have for next month is soil enhancement webinar. So this is going to be presented by Tim Voss. He's the program director for the Southwest Grain Collaborative. So the Zoom link and the registration will be all shared on our website. So do check that out. So next week we have an in-person event, and the following week we have a webinar. So there's 2 chances if you want to attend, attend both, I should say. For the both in person, if you're in Kirtland and you're sticking around for the Northern Navajo Fair that's going on, both in Shiprock, and the livestock shows being held at McGee Park. So if you're between those 2 areas, feel free to come by and visit us in Kirtland for the plant pollinators presentation. And like I said, soil enhancement webinar registration link will be all posted on our website. So that will be presented by Tim Voss, and it will be starting at 5:30 p.m. And like I said, and I've mentioned before the start of this presentation, we do have a website, you guys. It's at nsa.nmsu.edu. This shows basically how our homepage will look like. We also have a box here where all of our information from our upcoming events are shared on our Facebook page. We also have Meet the Team, our previous program, and we also have the conservation planning program. We have our upcoming events and our webinars and workshops. This is where all of our recording webinar presentations are located, as well as some of the presenters when they share a lot of their publications that they work towards, and they have it publicized. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. My words are rambling on, but they have their publications under New Mexico State University, and we share them under this tab. So if you want to look at that, feel free. We have our newsletters on there and USDA program directory. And we also have a conservation planning program that we collaborate with the Dene College Land Grant Office. So we assist with conservation plans and developing a basic conservation plans in both in Eastern and Northern Navajo agencies. So this is free of charge. If you're a producer, such as a farmer or a rancher, and you need some assistance in developing a conservation plan, feel free to email us at nsaproject@nmsu.edu. You can also, if you're a part of the farm board or you're part of a land board, and you're want to request a workshop, first it will be an orientation let us know and email us at nsaproject@msu.edu. We also have a request conservation planning program tab that has all of our information to our templates to Dene College, land grant templates are all on that website and the request forms on there as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to email us. And we also have our contact information as well. If you want to discuss more about the certifications and how you want to reach Craig on what he just had mentioned a while ago, feel free. My email is there. Jesse Jim's also there as well with the Conservation Planning Program. And thank you all for joining us. We're on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel where all of our webinars are recorded and posted. And we will have our newsletter coming out soon. So thank you all, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. I want to introduce to you all who we are as a project. I see a lot of familiar names on here, so welcome back. We're happy to have you. I also see new folks on here as well, so thank you for coming on here this evening to listen in on cattle marketing. So for those of you that have followed us this past year, you may have known that we have webinars every week, but since COVID has been lifted, we are shifting gears a bit. From here on out, beginning of September, we have decided to have webinars every other week. So keep a lookout for our upcoming webinars and workshops. They're going to be posted on our Facebook page and our website as well. What will also be shared is our in-person events, of course. So let's go ahead and get started. Yate everyone, my name is Mikhail Lantana. I am the program specialist for the Navajo Sustainable Agriculture Project. In short, we're called the NSA Project. We are funded by the USDA Outreach and Assistance for Native Farmers and Ranchers and Veteran Farmers and Ranchers Program. My slide's not working. Hopefully it is on your end, but just to keep on going, to kind of expand on who we are as a project is mainly to help producers improve their operations, profitability, and sustainability through our educational programs and technical assistance that we provide in the following counties, which is McKinley, San Juan, and Cibola counties. And to kind of expand on the educational program outreach is we provide what used to be our weekly presentations, but now we're going on to every other week. And so each of our topics alternate from different agriculture, topics, from livestock related topics that can include herd health and cattle marketing, and perhaps parasites in horses to look out for, and so forth. And so we also have crop related, and we have garden related topics, from water storage, methods for your gardening, how to start up a hoop house, and so forth. So we partner a lot with our project partners, which of course is, you see their logo on here, is the May College Land Grant Office. And you also see COPE, which stands for Community Outreach and Patient Empowerment. You guys may have known Miss Carol Palmer. She comes on here every now and then to provide a lot of presentations on the gardening aspect of things. So it's really unique. So if you are interested in any of her presentations, they're posted on our YouTube channel and our website as well. But to go down, we also increase Navajo farmers' knowledge in the use of USDA programs. And most of you that are on here, you're perhaps familiar with the NRCS and FSA programs. And we collaborate with them as much as possible to have them showcase what type of local programs that they can offer to their local producers.
So we have them on our resource fairs as well. So their information, their webinars and presentations are all on our website as well. And lastly, increase the local production and consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables and healthy food of by Navajo families and individuals. So reverting back to our webinars, a lot of them garden related, they pertain to local production and vegetables and healthy foods. And we also have a food preservation that's going to be coming up soon. So that will be really interesting, and hopefully we get our foot through the door and provide an in-person one.